After a 2-year long break, I have returned. Welcome back to the Morgue podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Tayden Lovelace, and today we are going to do the promise that I promised back on October 31st, 2018, of talking about the Axeman of New Orleans. Now, they were a string of murders that took place between May 1918 and October 1919 in the city of New Orleans and Louisiana, the United States. I probably said that wrong. I don't care. But pretty much it was pretty gruesome. Like, all these murders were pretty gruesome. He was kind of racist, not gonna lie. He basically only targeted like Italian immigrants and Italian Americans, and that's really messed up. You know, I mean, murdering someone to begin with is messed up, but I mean, murder in general is just messed up. I don't know why you would do it. If you're thinking about it, just don't. It's messed up. People are gonna hate you. No one's gonna like you, and if people like you, they're messed up as well. So moral of the story is, don't commit murder. But anywho, I haven't done this podcast since 2018, and I thought, it's been 2 years. I have a podcast now on Spotify, and soon to be Apple Podcast and Google Podcast and all the other podcasting platforms. So I thought, might as well, let's jump into this, and with better mic quality, so it's actually bearable to listen to. So, with all that being said, let's get into the Axeman of New Orleans. As I have stated previously, the Axeman of New Orleans, well, the serial killings that took place, they took place between May of 1918 and October of 1919. Now, the way this man killed was obviously, he's called the Axeman, so you can think logically for a second and be like, man, I wonder if he used an AK-47. They weren't around at the time, so he couldn't have used them anyways. He used an axe. He used the axe that these owners happened to have in their households, and he basically bludgeoned them to death with it. Now, there were some survivors of these attacks. Most of them didn't survive, and honestly, that's a fat rip for everyone who died. The way he entered inside someone's home was through their door. It was removed by a chisel, the little door panel. It was the left on the floor near the door, so you can imagine that. How would someone fit through that? You'd have to be kind of small to fit through that size of a door panel, because door panels are small. But apparently he got in, and apparently victims said he was a pretty stocky dude, so as a stocky dude myself, I can't fit through a door panel. Not even if I wanted to. The reason these murders are so weird, besides him entering through a freaking door panel, was that there was no robbery at these houses, and whoever the Axeman was, he never removed items from the victims' homes, which still is robbery, so I don't know why I had to state that twice. Wikipedia, you're gay. But, why would you murder someone? Like, okay, so I'm not out here vouching for murderers to rob someone's house. That'd be, armed robbery because you're killing, and then murder because you killed someone. Like, if you're gonna do it, not that I'm advocating for murder in any way, shape, or form, so please don't take this out of context. Why not just go and do that too? You're gonna get caught for the most part, so it's like, might as well have a little more fun. But these were just, I don't know what kind of killings these were. Like, straight up, he just killed because he wanted to. Because they were Italian. So, at least I'm going to go with because they were Italian, because there's no other reason why. And so, let's get right into the victims and how they died, or how they survived, because, well, we pretty much went over all the backstory. He's a dude, probably, who kills, group of people. We don't have a motive why, so that kind of sucks. I mean, I think we do, because he was racist. At least that's the one I'm thinking of, because there's literally no other reason why he would kill people. I love how every time I go to record something, I'm always sick, or I'm always congested. I was congested for Jack the Ripper. I was congested for the introduction episode as well. But without any further ado, let's get straight into the victims and talk about every single one of them, because if we leave one out, that's bad on my part, and we're not going to do that, because then that means the podcast would suck, and we don't want that to happen, do we? So, let's jump straight into this. The first victim, or victims, were Joseph Maggio and his wife, Catherine Maggio. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. If I am, then great. If I'm not, then fat rip for me. But he was an Italian grocer. He was attacked on May 23rd, 1980. Did I say 1980? 1918 while sleeping alongside his wife at their home at the corner of Upper Lynn and Magnolia Streets, where they had conducted a broom and grocery. The killer broke into the house and proceeded to cut the couple's throats with a straight razor, like, my gosh. And then, upon leaving, he decided to bash their heads in with an axe. Maybe in order to conceal the real cause of death. No one knows. Joseph survived the attack, but I don't know how they measure this, but then he died minutes after being discovered by his... Oh, that's why. After being discovered by his brothers, Jacob and Andrew Maggio. Catherine died prior to the brothers' arrival. In the apartment, law enforcement agents found the bloody clothes of the murderer, as he obviously changed into a clean set of clothes before fleeing the scene, as you would. A complete search of the premise was not completed by police after the bodies were removed. Yet, later the bloody razor was found on the lawn of the neighboring property. Police ruled out robbery as a motive for the attacks, and the money and valuables were left inside of the home. So, kind of strange. The razor used to kill the couple was found to belong to Andrew Maggio, the brother of deceased, who conducted a barbershop on Camp Street. His employee, Esteban Torres, told the police that Maggio had removed the blazer from his shop 2 days prior before the murder, explaining that he had wanted to have nick honed from the blade. So that's pretty cool. Kind of sus on Andrew. I don't have corona, I swear. But that's a little messed up, you know? It's a little sus. I'm not saying he's the dude. Probably isn't. Well, it's a little sus that he took his razor out of his shop 2 days before the murder. But then again, if you were going to murder someone, you wouldn't tell someone you're taking the blade out with you. Maggio, who lived in the adjoining apartment to his brother's residence, discovered his slain brother and sister-in-law roughly 2 hours after the gruesome attacks had occurred upon hearing strange groaning noises through the wall. Maggio blamed his failure to hear noise related to the attacks that had occurred early in the morning hours on his intoxicated state. That's why you don't get drunk, kids. As he returned home after a night of celebration prior to his departure to join the Navy. Yeah, as you do. Police, however, were nonetheless surprised that he had failed to hear the intruder as he made a forced entry into the home. Andrew Maggio became the police chief's prime suspect in the crime, yet was released after investigators were unable to break down his statement. Which, you know, kind of makes sense. As well as this account, I cannot read, account of an unknown man who was supposedly seen lurking near the residence prior to the murders. So, that's pretty cool. Now, this is the part where the podcast gets labeled explicit. It's not that I curse because I don't like cussing. It's because of how violent it is. Because we're talking about real life murders from real life people who have died. It's going to be graphic. I apologize. I might just need to go ahead and label the podcast explicit in general. But the second victim was, of course, Catherine Maggio, who was the wife of Joseph Maggio. And this is the part, you know, where I have to put up the advisory thing, even though you already clicked on it and it's explicit. So here it is. Her throat was cut so deeply that her head was nearly severed from her shoulders. Now, if you know anything about cutting off heads, which I don't, you have a thing called a spinal cord, right? Yeah, to cut through that, it's going to take, you know, a lot of effort, especially if you're just using a blade. Now, if you're using an axe, you know, just go chop, chop, not that long. But if you're using a blade, so, anywho, those are the first two murders. It's really sad, to be honest with you. It is, honestly. The fact that, you know, someone could do that, it's messed up, you know. I'm not trying to have an honest moment on you guys, but life is short. Celebrate it. Live it. Live it every day, because you really have no idea when it is your last day. So, since Catherine is technically the second victim, the third and fourth victim is Louis Bessemer and his mistress, Harriet Lowe. They were attacked in the early morning hours of June 27th, 1918, in the quarters at the back of his grocery store, which was located at the corner of, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, so if I mess this up, I'm sorry. It's Dorgnus and La Harpe Streets. Bessemer was struck with a hatchet above his right temple, which resulted in a possible skull fracture. Lowe was hacked over in the left ear and found unconscious when the police arrived at the scene. The couple was discovered shortly after 7 a.m. on the morning of the attack by Jean Zanka, the driver of a bakery wagon who had come to the grocery store in order to make a routine delivery. Because bread needs to be delivered. Because this is the 1918s. I mean, still, bread still does get delivered today. But, you know, bread's delicious sometimes. You know, like Hawaiian bread, delicious. Also, I cut my finger on some tape. Don't ask how. It's like the little Scotch tape. Because I was putting up my pop filter because I didn't want to hold it. Because the earlier part, there's a lot of plosives, so I had to get rid of those. For later. So I now have a cut on my thumb, and it hurts a little bit. Anyways, oh my gosh. I am so congested. I am so sorry. I don't have the COVID. I don't have the coof. I am fine. So, sorry about that. Let's get back into it. Zanka found both Bessemer and Lowe in a puddle of their own blood, bleeding from their heads. The axe, which had belonged to Bessemer himself, was found in the bathroom of the apartment. Bessemer later stated to police that he had been sleeping when he was abashed with the hatchet. Almost immediately, police arrested a potential suspect, Louis Ubicon, a then 41-year-old black man who had been employed in Bessemer's store just a week before the attacks. No evidence existed which could have proved the man guilty, yet the police arrested him nonetheless, stating that Ubicon had offered conflicting accounts of his whereabouts on the mornings of the attack. And I said mornings of the attack, I meant the morning of the attack. So far we have a racist dude who doesn't like Italian Americans, who has killed at this point has killed at least 2 people so far. And they arrested a black dude. Just honestly, about conflicting whereabouts, I'm not sure. I'm going to go ahead and give the officers the benefit of the doubt, saying that they were conflicting. But always keep in mind, this is the early 1900s. They were racist people, still racist people back today. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Because I don't like jumping on the racist bandwagon. Even though I'm going to on the whole Axeman killing only Italian Americans and Italian immigrants. Because as you do. Anywho, shortly after the attempted murder, Lowell stated that she remembered having been attacked by a mulatto man, which if you don't know what that is, it is a person having black and white ancestry. So, I'm going to say that's mixed. Because, you know, that's how that works. But anywho, she said she was attacked by a mulatto man, yet her statement was discounted by police due to her disillusioned state. Robbery was said to be the only possible explanation for the attacks, yet no money or valuables were removed from the couple's home. Abakul was later released as the police were unable to gather sufficient evidence to hold him accountable for the crimes. So I say, good for him. Because we don't know if he was the murderer or not. The media attention soon turned to Bessemer himself, as a series of letters written in German, Russian, and Yiddish were discovered in the trunk of the man's home. Police suspect that Bessemer was a German spy and a government official. Oh, I just read too much. Police suspected that Bessemer was a German spy, and government officials began a full investigation to his potential espionage. Weeks later, after going in and out of consciousness, Harriet Lowe told the police she thought Bessemer was in fact a German spy, which led to his immediate arrest. 2 days later, Bessemer was released, and 2 investigators of the case were demoted due to unacceptable police work. Bessemer was once again arrested in August of 1918 after Harriet Lowe, who lay dying in Cherry Hospital after a failed surgery, stated that it was he who had attacked her more than a month previously with his hatchet. He was charged with murder and served 9 months in prison before being acquitted on May 1st, 1990, after a 10-minute jury deliberation. So that's kind of wild. The 5th victim, of course, was Harriet Lowe, who was attacked in bed with Louis Bessemer, as previously mentioned. Louis was hacked above her ear and found unconscious at the scene of the crime before she was rushed to Charity Hospital, also mentioned previously. Lowe became the center of the media circus as she continually made scandalous and often false statements relating both the attacks of the character of Louis Bessemer, some of which described in the preceding description. The Times Pekunu, I don't know how to pronounce that, sensationalized Lowe and her outspoken nature upon discovering that she was not the wife of Bessemer, but his mistress, because, whoa, Charity Hospital source developed this scandal, because why not? When Bessemer asked to be directed to the room of Mrs. Harriet Lowe, she was inevitably denied access as no woman by the name was a patient. Well, no woman by that name was a patient. Bessemer's legal wife arrived from Cincinnati in the days immediately following the discovery, which further inflamed the ongoing drama. Because life. Lowe further gained media attention as she repeatedly made statements which voiced her dislike of the New Orleans chief of police, as well as her own reluctance to comply with police questioning. And as you know, rule number 1 of police work, you do not deny police questioning, because that makes you very suspicious. After the truth of her marital status was revealed publicly, Lowe Times told the reporters that she would no longer aid the police in their investigation, as she suspected that it had been Chief Mooney who first informed the press of the scandal. Despite the scandal, her delirious statements, which had suggested that Bessemer was a German spy. Lowe returned to her home. She shared with Bessemer weeks after the attacks. One side of her face was partially paralyzed due to the severity of the attack, which, if you get your face hacked, you're probably going to get paralyzed a little bit. Lowe died August 5th, 1918, just 2 days after doctors performed a surgery in an effort to repair her partially paralyzed face. Just prior to her death, Lowe told authorities that she suspected it was Louis Bessemer who had attacked her. Now, this is all very messed up, as you've probably gathered from me talking about this. But I don't think we've made it through half the list of the people killed. We have not. We're close. We're about 2 people away after this one that's coming up, which is Anna Schneider. But it's just crazy, you know? That, I mean, then again, I don't know. I don't know why someone would blame their husband, but then again, she probably had her reasons. Even though she was delirious, that could be a reason too. She may have just been delirious and thought it was her husband. We don't know. And, you know, sometimes there's, you know, we just never will find out if it was him or not. And, you know, that sucks sometimes as someone who always wants to know the truth. It sucks because I want to know if he did it or not. And frankly, I don't think we ever will. Also, massive side note, I just realized I was recording in the wrong cardio pattern for the past 17 minutes. I don't feel like going back and redoing it, so we're leaving it at this. Not leaving it at this, we're going to keep going. But I fixed the cardio pattern, so hopefully it's a bit better. If it's a little more peaky, I'm sorry. But hopefully this sounds a lot better than what the original did, because I noticed a little bit of a change. Like, this one sounds more crisp. We're still going to EQ it, so it still sounds better in post. But anyways, let's get back into the actual podcast. So sorry for the editor's note. The next victim was a lady named Anna Schneider. She was attacked in the early morning hours of August 5th, 1918. At about 8 months pregnant, the 28-year-old of Emerial Street awoke to find a dark figure standing over her and was bashed in her face repeatedly. Now, not gonna lie, that's not a pro-gamer moment at all. Her scalp had been cut open and her face was completely covered in blood. Miss Schneider was discovered after midnight by her husband, Ed Schneider, who was returning late from work, as you do, wink wink. Schneider claimed that she had remembered nothing of the attacks and gave birth to a healthy baby girl 2 days after the incident. Now, may I just say, she gave birth to a healthy baby 2 days after she had her face bashed in. That is a strong woman, I'll tell you that much. She got her face bashed in and then was like, oh yeah, I'm also just going to give birth because, you know, why not? But yeah, I think that's kind of cool, you know? Now, she's experienced 2 very painful things in life. Face bashed in and pregnancy. So, congrats to Anna Schneider. I'll give her a round of applause from here. So that's pretty cool. Her husband told police that nothing was stolen from the home, you know, as Axeman, besides $6 or $7 that had been in his wallet. So, you told him nothing was stolen from the house except for $6 or $7. That means something was stolen from your house if your wallet was at the home. The windows and door of the apartment appeared to not have been forced open, and authorities came to the conclusion that the woman was most likely attacked with a lamp that had been on a nearby table. Now, I know bashing someone's head in is probably kind of difficult, or probably not. I don't know. I've never done it. I don't want to. But using a lamp, I imagine lamps probably back then were a bit more heavy duty, like steel or iron or whatever they were made out of back in the day. So I can imagine it was kind of heavy, so that's became a blunt force object. But so far, he kind of has a crappy time at killing people, because some people have actually survived. So he's kind of a bad killer. But yeah, lamps. Great job. James Glinson, who police said was an ex-convict, was arrested shortly after Schneider was found. I probably pronounced his name wrong. I'm going to say Gleanson, I don't know how to pronounce his name, was later released due to a complete lack of evidence and stated that he originally ran from authorities because he had so often been arrested. Now, if I was getting arrested for the 8th time again, I'd probably run too because I don't want to go. Then again, I'd probably have a good reason. Lead investigators began to publicly speculate that the attack was related to the previous incidents involving Bessemer and Maggio. So, I mean, that's cool-ish, you know? Lamp! I can already imagine the headline. Lamp used to attack person or something. I don't know. I'm not good with headlines. There's a reason I don't work for the Post. But yeah, that's kind of crazy. I say kind of. That's very crazy. I mean, using a lamp. But yeah, so let's get into the next victim. Now, the name of the next victim was Joseph Romiano. I'm just going to call him Joseph because I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name more than once. He was an elderly man living with his 2 nieces, Pauline and Mary Bruno. On August 10th, 1918, Pauline and Mary awoke to the sound of commotion in the adjoining room where, where their uncle rested. Upon entering the room, the sisters discovered that their uncle had taken a serious blow to the head, which resulted in 2 open cuts. The assailant was fleeing the scene as they arrived, yet the girls were able to distinguish that he was a dark-skinned man, heavy-set, who wore a dark suit and a slouched hat. Joseph, although seriously injured, was able to walk to the ambulance once it arrived, which I think is kind of cool, yet died 2 days later due to severe head trauma, which, if you get 2 open cuts in your head, that's pretty bad. The home had been ransacked, yet no items were stolen from Joseph. Authorities found a bloody axe in the backyard and discovered that a panel from the back door had been chiseled away. The Romiano murder created a state of extreme chaos in the city of New Orleans, with residents living in constant fear of an Axeman attack. Police received a slew of reports in which citizens claimed to have seen an Axeman lurking in New Orleans neighborhoods. A few men even called to report they had found axes in their backyards. John D'Antonio, I'm going to say D'Antonio, a then retired Italian detective, made public statements in which he hypothesized. I'm just going to say hypothesized. We're going to go with hypothesized that the man who had committed the Axeman murders was the same who had killed several individuals in 1911. At that point, that would have been 7 years ago? The retired detective cited similarities in the manner by which the 2 sets of homicides had been committed as reason to assume that they had been conducted by the same individual. D'Antonio described the potential killer as an individual of dual personalities who had killed. I just ruined that really cool moment that I was going for, and I apologize. But as a killer, or as an individual with dual personalities, who'd kill without motive. As we've seen so far, there's literally been no motive except for the fact they were Italian. So there's that. This type of individual, D'Antonio stated, could very likely have been a law-abiding citizen who was often overcome by an overwhelming desire to kill. He later went on to describe the killer as a real-life Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now, being called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde might be kind of cool to some people, but if you're killing someone, that's not that cool. That made no sense. It's not very cool to kill someone is what I'm trying to say. So, if you're thinking about it, just don't. Save everyone some heartache and don't. If you feel like it, just go turn yourself in. Because that's all I can say. But let's get on to the next victims. The next 3 victims all died on the same night. Now, I know this is very dark voice that I just somehow put forward here, and I apologize if it sounds weird compared to the voice that I used going into this, segment beforehand. That made no sense. We're just going to roll with it. The next 3 victims are Charles, Rosie, and Mary Cortamalinga. I'm not going to say their last name because I really don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm not going to. But Charles, the father, was an Italian immigrant who lived with his wife, Rosie, and his infant daughter, Mary, on the corner of Jefferson Avenue and 2nd Street in Gretna, Louisiana, a New Orleans suburb across the Mississippi River. On the night of March 10th, 1919, Screams were heard coming from the residence of Charles, Rosie, and Mary. Grocer Lorando Giordano. I really suck at pronouncing names, and I should spend 20 minutes before I do an episode pronouncing names, because gee whiz, rushed across the street to investigate. Upon his arrival, Giordano noticed that Charles, his wife, and their daughter had all been attacked by an unknown intruder. Rosie stood in the doorway with a serious head wound, clutching her unfortunately deceased daughter. Charles laid on the floor, bleeding profusely. The couple was rushed to Charity Hospital, where it discovered that both suffered skull fractures. Nothing was stolen from the house, but a panel on the back door had been chiseled away, and a bloody axe was found on the back porch of the home. Are we seeing a pattern here? Charles was released 2 days later, while his wife remained in the care of doctors. Upon gaining full consciousness, Rosie made claims that Lorando Giordano and his 18-year-old son Frank were responsible for the attacks. Lorando, a 69-year-old man, wasn't too poor of health to have committed the crimes. Frank was more than 6 feet tall and weighed over 200 pounds, would have been too large to fit through the panel on the back door. I feel that. Charles vehemently, I don't know how to pronounce that word, basically just viciously denied that his wife claimed. Just denied his wife's claims. Yet police nonetheless arrested the two and charged him with murder. The man would later be found guilty. Frank was sentenced to hang and his father life in prison. Charles divorced his wife, and after the trial, almost 2 years later, Rosie announced that she had falsely accused the two out of jealousy and spite. Her statement was the only evidence against the Giordanados, and they were released shortly from jail thereafter. Now, that is very crummy. How? That is the biggest douche move I've ever read. Like, even in books. This is the realest, most douchest moment I've ever met. Not met. That made no sense either. Hello, my name is Taden Lovelace. I don't like to make sense half the time. That was very douchey on her part. Very. You don't make up false evidence and you don't do that. That can ruin someone's life. Don't do it. Rosie was the wife of Charles, and she was attacked alongside her husband on the same day while sleeping with her baby in her arms. She was badly wounded, but she survived the incident. And I believe Charles did too, because I didn't see anything about him dying. So we're going to say Charles survived too. Actually, he did. Yeah, so that's good. But unfortunately, the 2-year-old daughter, she was killed while sleeping in her mother's arm with a single blow to the back of the neck. That's very sad. Having your daughter be killed. I don't know what that's like. I hope I don't have to ever, but that is very sad. So this is the part of the story where I jump into the Axeman's letter, because I'm pretty sure all of y'all have heard of it at this point. But it is from, and I'm just going to read it as it is. The Hottest Hell, March 13th, 1990. Esteemed mortals of New Orleans, the Axeman. They've never caught me and they never will. They've never seen me, for I am invisible. Even as the ether surrounds your earth, I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians, and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clues except for my bloody axe. Besmeared me with blood in the brains of he who I have sent below to keep me company. Now, I said that wrong, so I'm going to say it again. Besmeared with the blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but his satanic majesties, Francis, Joseph, etc. But tell them to beware. Let them not to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there's any need of such a warning, for I feel the police will always dodge me, as they always have in the past. They are wise, and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as the most horrible murderer, which I am. I love how he tooted his own horn. But I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, and the worst, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is at full swing in the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then so much better for you. Then so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is, if that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, I think that's how you pronounce it, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will seize my discourse. Yeah, discourse. I'm going to say discourse. Hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that have ever existed, either in fact, or realm, or fancy. The Axeman. Despite me screwing up some of the words, that's a giant threat. And I would like to say that at Tuesday at 12:15, everyone in New Orleans was jazzing it up. And I can say I like jazz, so that's pretty cool. But kind of sad the Axeman likes it, but oh well. Anywho, no one was killed that night. And no one was killed for a little while after. So people, I'd say people, BuzzFeed Unsolved, the people who did that, they said he probably went on a business trip. And frankly, that'd be kind of funny. It was relatively calm after that. And, the remaining months, pretty cool. April went by, June went by, July went by. And then on August 10th, 1919, tragedy struck again in New Orleans. A grocer by the name of Steve Baca was attacked in his bedroom as he slept by an axe-wielding intruder on August 10, 1919. Baca awoke during the night to find a dark figure looming over his bed. Upon regaining consciousness, Baca ran to the street to investigate the intrusion and found that his head had been cracked open. The grocer ran to the home of his neighbor, Frank Genusa, where he lost consciousness and collapsed. Nothing had been taken from his home, yet once again, a panel on the back door of the home had been chiseled away. Baca recovered from his injuries, but he could not remember any details of the trauma. The attack took place after the emergence of, as mentioned previously, the infamous Axeman letter. The next two victims were about a month apart, and we'll go ahead and get into those two. Sarah Lawman was attacked on the night of September 3rd, 1919. Neighbors came back to check on the young woman who lived alone and broke into the home when Lawman did not answer, as you do. They discovered the 19-year-old laying unconsciously on her bed, suffering from a severe head injury with several missing teeth. The intruder entered her apartment through an open window and attacked the woman with a blunt object. A bloody axe was found discovered on the front lawn of the building, and Lawman recovered from her injuries, yet couldn't recall any details from the attack. The final murder took place on October 27th, 1919. The person who was killed, his name was Mike Pepitone. His wife was awakened by a noise and arrived at the door of his bedroom, just as a large, axe-wielding man was fleeing the scene. Mike Pepitone had been struck in the head and was covered in his own blood. Blood splattered covered the majority of the room, including a painter of the Virgin Mary. Mrs. Pepitone, the mother of 6 children, was unable to describe any characteristics of the killer. The Pepitone murder was the last of the alleged Axeman attacks. Crime writer Colin Wilson speculates the Axeman could have been Joseph Mumfree, a man shot to death in Los Angeles in 1920 by the widow of Mike Pepitone, the Axeman's last known victim. I can't speak today. Wilson's theory has been widely repeated in other true crime books and websites. However, true crime writer Michael Newton searched New Orleans and Los Angeles public, police, and court records, as well as newspaper archives, and that's a lot of research, and failed to find any evidence that a man with the name Joseph Mumfree or similar name having been assaulted or killed in the city of Los Angeles. Newton was not able to find any information that Miss Pepitone, identified as some sources as Esther Albino, or in others simply as the woman who claimed to be Pepitone's widow, was arrested, tried, or convicted for such a crime, or indeed had been in California at all. Newton notes that Mumfree was not an unusual surname in New Orleans at the time of the crimes. It appears that there actually may have been an individual named Joseph Mumfree or Mumfree in New Orleans who had a criminal history and who may have been connected with organized crime. However, Local records for the period are not extensive enough to allow confirmation of this or to positively identify the individual. Wilson's explanation is an urban legend, and there's no more evidence now on the identity of the killer than there was at the time of the crimes. So, that kind of sucks a little bit, because I want to know who did it, but I don't think I ever will. This probably should have been stated earlier, but I'm going to put it in now, because better late than never. 2 of the alleged early victims of the Axeman, an Italian couple named Sharimbra, were shot by an intruder in their lower Ninth Ward home in the early hours of May 16, 1912. The male Sharimbra survived while his wife died. In newspaper accounts, the prime suspect is referred by the name of Mumphrey more than once. While radically different than the Axeman's usual MO, if Joseph Mumphrey was indeed the Axeman, the Sharimbras may well have been the early victims of a future serial killer. According to scholar Richard Warren, the chief suspect in the crimes was Frank Doc Mumphrey, who lived from 1875 to 1921, who used the alias Leon Joseph Mumphrey / Mamfrey. The Axeman killed a total of 6 people and injured 6 more. He was never caught, and to this day, no one knows for sure who the Axeman may have been. Some people think it was the person killed by quote-unquote Mike Pepitone's widow. There's no proof of that, so we don't even know if that happened or not. People may think he's a demon from the hottest hell, as he said in his hottest hell letter that he wrote and was published in newspapers. But as quickly as the mystery started, he disappeared without a trace, and no one ever heard from him again. Which is obviously for the better, because no one wants to be killed by an axe. But no one knows to this day who he was, and like I said many, many, many times in this episode, we never will. And on that bombshell, it is time for this episode of the Morgue Podcast to end. Thank you so much for joining me in this first episode in 2 years, and thanks so much for watching. And we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.